This is Dateline News and Conversation. Tonight, we're going to continue the discussion with Professor Maria Nikolakaki from Greece about the Nazis and the rebirth of Nazism in Ukraine, in Europe, in the United States. Maria, welcome back to the show.
It's always a pleasure and an honor, dear Regis, to be in your show. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Let's pick it up with the Nazis. They're calling them neo-Nazis, but they're Nazis. They never died. The Ukrainian National Army really was in bed with Hitler and his Nazi Wehrmacht. Let's pick it up from there. And after World War II, the United States, primarily I think in Britain, basically took over this Ukrainian National Army and what we see today. Let's pick it up from there.
Well, yes, since World War II, but even before that, actually, because the actual Nazification had begun even before World War II. The Ukrainians had started to recruit Nazis that formed what we call UN, that's Organization of Ukrainian Nationals. So you can see that during the Second World War, they had actually formed brigades that had joined Hitler's army. There was the 14th Galician Brigade that had 220,000 men. So we see how this union of Ukrainian Nazis with Hitler's Nazis was more than the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And why I say that? Because all these nationals were against, as we said in the previous show, against three things, I would say: communism, Jews, and Slavs. I'm repeating that because, most of those who mention about the Holocaust mention only Jews, as if only Jews were sacrificed there, but it's not the case. There were also Slavs were the second most ethnic group that was hated by Hitler. It was also the communist ideology. Of course, in order to target Russia, they had to connect Slavs and communism. But also it's the Roma people and the gay people and the disabled people. So it was a bigger operation against the feebles, or I would call it in Nietzschean term, the Untermenschen, as opposed to the Ubermans, who were the Germans. And here we see how Ukrainians identified so much with the Germans that they called themselves the German Ukrainians. Now, it was not a case that was isolated either, because it wasn't only one trend or one leader in this battle. So we have, of course, the most well-known was Bandera, Stefan Bandera, who has become a national hero of Ukraine. And they have statues, and he's on the paper notes of Ukraine. But we also have Svoboda, who was another nationalist. We also have Roman Shukevich and Yaroslav Strechko and many others who actually were part of the nationalist movement in Ukraine, and they were actually fighting the Russians. Now, we also must understand that this ideology is something that has been used by the CIA in order to divide and conquer. So the plans for undermining Russia never ceased to exist. And they used, of course, Hitler to invade USSR, but using also the UN, the Ukrainian nationals. But also we must understand that this use of Nazism is a tool of capitalism to make private armies, public armies, sorry. So it actually makes fanatics out of civilians who are indoctrinated into this misanthropy agenda, hate the other that's not like you. And this is how they divide and conquer us. This is always a construction of capitalism, as we said in the previous video that we had. It's a construction of capitalism to rule over humans, and capitalism reserves to Nazism and fascism when it is under threat, when it is facing problems. It radicalizes ideologically the people by social engineering, and it turns them into servants or soldiers of the capitalist interests. So I think we need to understand that all this brainwashing that has been going on in Ukraine since before the Second World War has been a power that has been motivated by CIA and Western powers to attack Mother Russia, because actually Slavs is one nation, and Russians have reportedly said that we are one nation and one day we will unite again. Peskov said that recently. And many see from the Russian part this war as a civil war, because until 30 years ago, they were one country. And they speak, most of them are Russian speakers. They also are Christian Orthodox. And so this is like, a tactical maneuver from deep state powers to destroy any unity that could exist between Russia and Ukraine, and to create the basis of the destruction of Russia through the state of Ukraine.
You know this, and I'm certainly aware of it. Most people in the West and in the United States of America will laugh at you and scoff at you when you tell them that Nazis, neo-Nazis, are in control of the government in Ukraine. They said, no, that couldn't be. There's no more Nazism. I want to continue talking about this, uh, but in Ukraine, they are so nationalistic, as you just alluded to. They believe that they're the chosen race. Anybody who's not like them, whether it be Slavs, whether it be the Roma, Gypsies, or Russians, um, they're persecuted. And a friend of mine, I interviewed him several years ago from his house in Massachusetts, Douglas Valentine, has written about the CIA as organized crime, but he's got a special segment there that I published as a separate piece called The CIA 70 Years in Ukraine. They've never left. And as you were saying, Maria, they've used this ideology to strengthen this sense of extreme nationalism. They've used it to create several Nazi groups within their parliament, and they've also used it to create several groups in their military, the most notorious being the Azov Battalion. So, Maria, your comments on how it's really impossible to separate Ukrainian nationalism from Nazism, and that the ideology and the followers of Stepan Bandera have never gone away. In fact, they're stronger now than they've ever been. Your comments.
First of all, whoever doubts the fact that there are Nazis in Ukraine are just brainwashed through the social engineering, because in order to vilify Putin's targets, which were denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine, they changed their own facts. So you can go back to 2014 or even back 2008, and there were Western media calling a spade, as much as they could, of course. And they were saying that Ukraine has a huge Nazi problem. And then suddenly they started to say, oh, no, it's not so big. It's only 3% of them were Nazis. And they just found one segment that was that had Nazism in their logo, and that was it. The point is that these nationalists have been trained and nurtured since their childhood. You can see training camps with children saluting the Nazi way and singing national songs and all that horrendous training that Nazis go through. And it was like a very it's these are facts. It's not how the West wants to present them, though, in order to achieve their targets. Another thing I think we need to see is like the Azov battalion and other battalions were tattooed with Nazi symbols. So one of the ways that the Russian army knew how to distinguish them was ask them to take off their shirts and see if they had any Nazi symbols on them, because all of these ideologues, Nazi ideologues, had made their body their temple of Nazism. Now, we also must see that this ideology is gives these people an identity of superiority for no reason but because they belong to this specific group. What I mean is that fascism and Nazism gives pride, gives an identity to the people that they belong to. It's group thinking. Also, we need to understand that fascism and Nazism are nurtured and are cultured on ignorance. So when we say ignorance, we mean people are not educated. There are books and there are claims that Ukrainians go back to ancient time and they are the superior race and nobody else is like them. And for any educated person, this might be an opportunity for some chuckles. But these people actually believe they are the Ubermensch. They are above everyone else. Nobody is like them. Another thing that we need to see is also their anti-Semitism, which means that they have one of their root characteristics is hatred for Jews. Now, if you go back to Second World War, one of the most horrific events that happened was at Babian Yar, where more than 100,000 Jews, but not only Jews and Russians and Roma, were slaughtered. It was outside of Auschwitz. It was one of the most horrific places of Jewish extermination. So what I'm saying is that it's a false ideology. It gives a false identity. It makes, while these people think they are superior, in practice, in reality, they are just tools and servants of the capitalist class. And we need to see how this ideology did not appear bottom up, but it was top down delivered in order to increase, let's say, the proximity of people, to make them one mass. It's a creation of a mass. And that mass construction needs you to leave behind your brain when you enter in it. And so this is something which you cannot, I mean, you may deny it, but that doesn't change the fact that it's true.
Couple of things, Maria. I think it's important to emphasize that for at least the last 79, 80 years since the end of World War II, this ideology has been ingrained in the people of Western Ukraine. And it's been indoctrinated through the schools, through civic events, as you mentioned, Stefan Bandera. They've made him a hero. They have statues of him. They've named streets after him. He's on their currency. And as you mentioned, they have had camps for children, teenagers, teaching them this ideology of hatred of Jews, hatred of Slavs, hatred of Russians, hatred of Roma. Um, so this has been going on for generations. But I want to emphasize not all of Ukraine has um, subscribed to this ideology.
Of course.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention was Russia, and Putin especially, has always said historically they have been one. They're brothers, Slavs. And he keeps repeating that because he is very much against historic revisionism, the rewriting of history as what is happening in the West, in Ukraine, in the United States. So I think that's very important. Now, let's fast forward to 2014 and the Maidan coup. I think people need to realize that this wasn't something that just happened. It was a long time in coming. It was nursed and managed by the United States of America, the CIA, and the people that most people who are paying attention will recognize: Victoria Nuland, Jeffrey Pyatt, the then ambassador, John McCain, and several other prominent American congresspeople appeared on the stage at Maidan encouraging this. Pick it up from there, Maria. The Maidan,
Uh,
openly supported.
I do. Let's say that the Western Ukraine has was more susceptible to that than the Eastern Ukraine. In the Eastern Ukraine, people were more prone to leftist ideology. They had a good memory of USSR, and so the Russian-speaking people were not open to this ideology. It was the the Western Ukraine that was open to such intrusion and corruption of their minds and brains. Second of all, we must, I think, before we talk about Nuland and Payat and all that, I think we need to discuss about Soros. Soros himself went out and said that his NGOs were very important in organizing the Maidan coup, which also now, opening a parenthesis, we see why it is important for Georgia to get rid of those NGOs. I'm opening a bigger discussion, but Georgia is a population of 3.7 million people. It has over 20,000 NGOs. The number is astonishing. What they do is that they through the allowance of these NGOs, the globalists are able to infiltrate in countries, create an informal, let's say, paramilitary, or let's say an army, ideological army that they can recruit at first hand. And that is what happened in Maidan, and we saw many of the lefties were again saying that it's a revolution and blah blah blah, while it was like a regime change, a color revolution organized by those who are experts in color revolutions and regime changes. Now, we must also understand that the West's desire to destroy Russia and take its resources goes back centuries. It's not it wasn't the first time, and I'm afraid it won't be the last. What we see is that, as we mentioned in the previous show that we had, they are literally saying that they want to decolonize, quote unquote, Russia. Decolonize. What is decolonize? They say Russia is overextending and unbalancing country. That was actually a title of a Rand paper made in 2019. The Atlantic says talks about the decolonization of Russia, but we also must remember Madeleine Albright said, "Oh, Russians are so selfish, having such a big land and keeping it for themselves." Like the European Commission of Strategic Partners says that it is a moral and strategic imperative to decolonize Russia. What does decolonization mean? It means what they did to Yugoslavia. So we have states that are so small that they couldn't ever become a threat to anyone, like Slovenia, Slovakia, Croatia, all these countries that were created after the 1999 bombardment of Yugoslavia, because it wasn't even a war. The Americans just bombed with a country that had nothing done to them. So what I'm trying to say is that these rich resources of Russia have always been in the eye of envy of other European countries. It was Napoleon, it was the Kaiser, it was Hitler. Now it's Biden. I mean, if Napoleon and Hitler couldn't do it, the audacity of thinking that U.S. by using Ukraine could do it is an absurd idea overall.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that takes us up to a very important point that you're talking about. The goal of the West has always been to decolonize or Balkanize, break up Russia to gain control over this vast region and to rape and pillage its vast natural resources, of which Russia has an abundance. And I'd like to also point out, as you're mentioning, this war in Ukraine is just the latest attempt to take down Russia. In fact, it is the stated foreign policy goal of the United States, out of the mouths of even Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken. They talk about the strategic defeat of Russia is the goal of over $100 billion of United States money with military advisors and troops on the ground to accomplish this goal of decolonizing, balkanizing, and a strategic defeat of Russia. Let's talk a little bit now about where we are today. It seems to me, and as you've mentioned, these globalists realize they've lost this particular war. They're desperate, they're panicking, they're using everything they can to maintain a hold on their power, their money, and their influence. Maria, your comments on how this attempt is spiraling out of control as we speak.
Well, we see they are getting fanatics. They are going to terrorist actions. On the one hand, we see on the battlefield that they are sending bombs to civilian places. Actually, this is war crime. You do not attack civilian houses. Now, yesterday in Belgorod, there were more than 40 people that were killed by bombs that USA and UK, David Cameron and Blinken gave the okay to Zelensky to attack Russia. Now, you don't need to be openly Nazi and say the ends justifies the means. But this is, this is fascistic. We saw the same thing, of course, done by the Zionists against Palestine, but deliberately attacking civilian population is nothing but fascism, clear fascism. Yes.
No, go ahead.
And another field that we see is that these globalists have lost their mind and they are attacking leaders of Western countries across the world. We saw what happened to Fico. We saw what happened to President Raisi and his foreign minister. I mean, people are mourning, and this will only add more hate towards these destinations.
I want to talk a little bit more about that. We talk about them being desperate. We can see, as you pointed out, they have dozens and dozens of NGOs. The CIA has a major role to play in every single American U.S. embassy in every country around the world. In fact, it isn't about diplomacy. It really is to have the CIA, the NSAID, George Soros, National Endowment for Democracy, all of them embedded in these countries using soft power. Billions of dollars worth of American taxpayer money to influence politicians, to train them. And in addition to that, they use this influence to bring about color revolutions like the Maidan. We're seeing it right now, possibly going to happen in the country of Georgia, in Serbia, Slovenia, and many other countries where they've got their people now who they feel it's time to call them and to act. Now, you mentioned the attempted assassination on Robert Fico of uh, Slovakia. My immediate thought was that has the CIA and Mossad's hands all over it. And then just yesterday, uh, the president of Iran dies in a helicopter crash, very suspicious, very close to the border of Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan, by the way, is very friendly with Israel.
Exactly. Nice secret services are there.
And so I think what we're seeing is desperation and fear on the part of these globalists who are trying to hold on to their power in the face of an imminent collapse. The other thing that they're doing, Maria, and I'd like your comments on this, you mentioned fascism. Now, we are seeing fascist behavior all across the European Union. The denial of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. We're seeing it now with these demonstrations, pro Palestinian demonstrations all across the world, in universities in America and now in Europe, and millions of people in other cities and countries around the world rising up in massive numbers protesting what's going on. In America, in the United States, we are seeing America being morphed into a fascist country. You look at the police, the military force, not only in America, in other countries in Europe as well, violently breaking up these peaceful demonstrations and encampments, arresting hundreds of people, and they're doing this right in front of everybody. It's not the first time. It happened during Occupy movement, where over one weekend, Barack Obama ordered the dismantling, violently in many cases, of the Occupy encampments around the country. We see it in the denial of free speech. Julian Assange is an icon of and an example of how the United States has treated someone who revealed the evil actions of the United States government. They're doing this to punish him. They're doing this to whistleblowers. They're doing this to people like us who are trying to speak truth to power. They cancel us. They cancel us on YouTube, on Facebook, everywhere. Tell me how dangerous this is, Maria, this rise of fascism around the world. And I also want to add there's a rebirth of Nazism across the United States. I researched this. There are dozens and dozens of Nazi groups identified by the FBI active in the United States today. Maria, your thoughts on how dangerous this is right now and what we're really facing?
The first thing that we need to understand, I think, is that fascism and Nazism never disappeared. It went undercover. We talked at the previous show how most of those ideologues were the SS scientists were transported to USA in all their secret services programs. We saw how these people who are in power today, most of them, if you see, there are more than 10, 11 of them who have Nazi origin. Their families were Nazis. And that is something that these numbers grow up, it's more than coincidence. I'm not saying that I'm not giving the assumption that there is family responsibility and that you heritage that the Nazi past of your um, fathers or grandfathers, but I'm saying is that those who have grown up in an environment that treats Nazism as an accepted ideology are more capable of becoming a Nazi themselves. We one of those paradigms that we mentioned at our previous show was von der Leyen. I mean, it's well documented. The leader of you, the unelected European leader, has a Nazi background, and that is totally acceptable. If we go to Canada, we see the same with Freeland. It's no coincidence, because what happens is that during peace periods, the ruling class doesn't want to rule with a fist, because this fist makes the common people react and try to resist. So they always want to implement soft power to rule us. But when things are getting out of hand, then they bring back the strong fist, which is fascism and Nazism, in order to rule the plebs. Now, what we need to understand is that it's all about capitalism and its economy. May I take 1 minute here, because since I came to this point, I wanted to show you my book, which is the Anatomy of Neoliberalism and Education, Imperialism, Class Struggle, and Pedagogy, where I actually connect the neoliberal economy and its measures with fascism. It's fact we have been trained to accept fascist measures as pure reason and logic. Why should the poor people be outcasted? Why should people working or even not working not have a house and a job that they could live off? Why have we accepted that the rich can get richer and the poor can get poorer? Why have we accepted that the rich elites are superior to us, and therefore we have to surrender our heritage from our ancestors, all the public property, all the public corporations or land or seas or mountains, and we surrender them to those who have been robbing and looting the people for as time remembers, and have proclaimed themselves as the ruling class. What is the ruling class? That it's not democracy. If we have to break the barriers and go deep down to the core of this ideology, we have to see that capitalism has nothing to do with democracy, and neoliberalism, as I explain in my book, is neo-fascism. And it's as I describe in my book, the difference between pure fascism and what this neoliberal ideology proclaims is that instead of racism, neoliberalism supports the identity politics, which is reversed racism. It's also a technique to divide and conquer us. So we are living through fascism and going to Nazism again. Nazism we saw through the pandemic. They locked us home. We had to take permission to go out. They forced us to isolate. They made people into traitors of their neighbors. How despicable! This is this is fascism. See, you telling off your neighbor because he went out more often than he was allowed is the core of the mechanism of fascism. It's like you are the moral one, you are superior to the other who is a law outbreak. So you are with the good, you are with the suppressors, you are one with them, you love them, and you hate what your neighbor is doing. That's how fascism is created. That's the ideology. So, yes, we are on the break of fascism and Nazism again. It's the only way they can pull forward all these evil plans they have for us. We have to surrender our brain, our mind, and our heart. That's the only way they can succeed. So this is a challenge for humanity. I'm saying it again. This challenge will show who has a soul, a psyche, as said in the Greek term, a psyche, or who has lost it in other material goods that are surrounding him.
Yeah, it is a class struggle. It's an us against them. These ruling powers, these obscenely rich people who have lorded this over us for centuries, and we see it now being played out very clearly. They don't even attempt to hide it. Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group. These are all these capitalists, these people who think they're superior to the rest of us, planning to have a golden billion, get rid of 6-7 million people around the world who don't serve them anymore. And their agenda, as you mentioned, is depopulation. Bill Gates, the Rockefellers are foremost in that group. You have United Nations Agenda 2030. You have the WHO, who the rest of the world is ready to allow them to come up with another pandemic plan for something that hasn't even happened yet. And so this is not only insidious, Maria, it's evil. And as you mentioned, it's trying to destroy our soul. And another way of talking about that is it's trying to destroy our basic humanity, transhumanism, all of this technocracy that you and I have talked about before is really all about destroying our humanity. Your final thoughts on that?
Well, we started during the other show that we did saying that the New World Order was a goal that was embraced by Hitler. I'm not saying he came up with this, but he embraced it in 1941, and he said, "This is our project. Nazism is New World Order." We see now how all the plans to end humanity and to take us into a post-human, transhuman world means that they want to turn us into objects that can follow orders. That was Nazism's main goal, to create um, non-thinking, obedient followers that would go to extremes to support the leaders' wants. We see this again and again, and actually Klaus Schwab said humanity has lost its roads for over 75 years. Oh yeah, gee, what happened before 75 years that if humanity lost its road? Oh yes, Nazism fell. If you don't see what it is for what it is, God help you. This is based on economics. They want to control everything. It's capitalism on steroids. They want to control us and everything we have, all our possessions. They want to control nature. They want to control our bodies. If they want to see us as alienated beings, objectified, that won't resist any kind of call they have for us to do whatever they want. They don't want workers' rights. They don't want any resistance. They want it all. They are going now for the big game. The final solution, as Hitler said, this is the final solution: depopulate and control the rest. Now, I do not believe that these goals are achievable. I do believe, and I do love human beings. I think we are created for good. We are God's creation. And they will fail, as they have tried again and again, all these evil powers to harm humanity. I am just, though, very much concerned about how much damage will be done until they are defeated, and that's where my anxiety comes for, and so that's why I'm becoming outspoken, because I feel that it is a necessity and an obligation towards other fellow humans to tell them how things are, not on theories, but based on knowledge and facts. So here we are, my dear friend Regis, and this is why we meet.
Wow, very well said, Maria. Um, you know, as long as some of us, and there are many of us, who are speaking truth to power, um, as long as we can keep doing this, educating people on facts, on knowledge, on history, um, I think it's the only chance that we have to save what's left of our basic humanity. Maria, I can't thank you enough. We'll look forward to doing another show on Friday with you, same time, on the WHO, the World Health
WHO.
Organization.
Oh my God, how evil. Thank you very much, my dear friend. Thank you also, you.